Have you ever found a social media creator and think to yourself, I can't believe I'm not already following this person? If you're watching this on TikTok, Sacagawea, I will tag her in the caption. Oh my God. She has taught me so much about how the baby product industry, like formula, diapers, actively campaigns against the very population that they sell their products to. Mothers. Check this out. First, the diaper industry has lobbied to increase the potty training age. The potty training age used to be like 18 months or something. Now it's age 3. Mind blown. And I've talked about how motherhood destroys your career, especially in the United States. The amount of money mothers lose over time in their careers is astounding. This is from The Economist. The motherhood penalty is the average amount by which a woman's probability of being employed declines during the 10 years after the birth of her first child. 24% of women end up leaving the labor force within the first year. 5 years later, 17% of those are still gone. And after 10 years, 15% are. There's a perception that mothers are unfit for leadership roles. They're seen as less competent and less committed to their careers once they become mothers. They're paid lower and denied opportunities for advancement, for promotions. Now, some people will say, oh, well, the women are choosing to do that. That's not discrimination. They're choosing. By that logic, slaves chose too. Oh, yeah, they had a choice not to be slaves. They could have run away. They could have rose up against the masters. Yeah, and be unalived. Or have their children tortured and unalived in front of them. Or have their families sold to other families as punishment. Or received unbelievable amounts of torture themselves as punishment. When all your other choices are either life-threatening or financially devastating, which is the same thing as life-threatening, in my opinion, the choice that you're forced into isn't really a choice. If all your options suck, you're not free. That's not liberation. That's a bunch of shitty choices based on a system designed to keep you out of the workforce and in the home, and you just make the least shitty choice. Women are not free in any patriarchal system. Moving on. The cause of the gender pay gap is motherhood. When you look at two people, a man and a woman at the start of their careers, nobody has kids, the gender pay gap isn't that big. It's relatively equal, but then something happens. The women get older and they become mothers. This is from Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. Mothers face penalties in hiring, starting salaries, and perceived competence, while fathers can benefit from becoming a parent. Visibly pregnant women in the workplace are seen as less competent, less interested in climbing the ladder, less interested in promotions, and more emotional. Findings: mothers suffer penalty relative to non-mothers and men in the form of lower perceived competence and commitment, higher professional expectations, lower likelihood of hiring and promotion, and lower recommended salaries. Competency rates for women were 10% lower. They were judged as 10% less competent mothers versus non-mothers, and these were otherwise equal candidates. Mothers are considered 12.1% less committed to their jobs than non-mothers, while fathers are perceived as 5% more committed than non-fathers. Compared to childless men, mothers were rated 6.4 percentage points lower with regard to commitment than childless men. Mothers are 6 times less likely than childless women and 3.35 times less likely than childless men to be recommended for hiring. They are also disadvantaged when it comes to promotions. Childless women are 8.2 times more likely to be recommended for promotion than mothers. In the audit study conducted with real employers, childless women still have an advantage. They receive 2.1 times as many callbacks as equally qualified mothers. Now let's dig down to brass tacks. What does that represent in dollars? Mothers were recommended a 7.9% lower starting salary than non-mothers. $139,000 compared to $151,000. This was a Harvard study, so they were studying professional women, by the way, which is 8.6% lower than the recommended starting salary for fathers. So even the childless women are making less than the fathers. Among men, the trend is reversed. Fathers were offered a significantly higher starting salary than childless men, $152,000 versus $148,000. So let me get this straight. Highest paid, $152,000 fathers, $151,000 childless women. So fathers are considered more competent, more dedicated to their job even than childless women because they make even slightly more. Interestingly, childless men are paid a little bit less starting salary than childless women because there's also a perception that childless men are not responsible, so they won't show up to work. But having kids, becoming a father, ooh, that makes you responsible. But women are already considered responsible, of course, until they have children. Then they start at $139,000. Interesting. Now, for the men who jump in and say, oh, it's unfair that the childless men get paid less than the childless women. Yeah, it is. But I explained to you the reason why. Patriarchy is at the heart of all of this crap. It is these patriarchal, misogynistic ideas that men can't be grown, competent adults until fatherhood forces them into being responsible. Versus motherhood makes women not care about anything else but motherhood. Therefore, you can't depend on them to show up on time, be dedicated, want the promotion, etc. And the idea that childless women, oh, they can come in early, stay late because what else have they got going on? Yeah, I have a life. But they assume if women are not raising children, they have all the time in the world. They don't do anything else because what else could they possibly do? And even if you don't have children, some employers look at you and say, oh, well, she doesn't have children yet, but she might. Especially if you're in your late 20s and early 30s and you're looking for a new job. That's called maternal profiling. Sometimes they'll bring you in at a lower salary, even if you don't have kids yet, because you're at that sweet spot age where they're expecting that you're gonna have kids in a couple years. That's some bullshit. In conclusion, you are either paid less or driven out of the workforce by the high cost of childcare and the fact that nobody wants to give you a promotion or hire you once you become a mother. Then if you do leave the workforce and you want to go back to work, the diaper industry puts the kibosh on that too, and they make you delay that as much as possible because they say, oh, they support research that says you shouldn't start to potty train your kid until age 3. Even though in the post-war era, they were potty training kids at 18 months or 2 years. So that gives you an extra year and a half where you have a child that's still in diapers, which delays the amount of time you can go back to school, re-enter the workforce, etc. And the longer you delay that, the longer you delay being able to put your kid in preschool because most preschools require that kids be potty trained before they can go to preschool, which is substantial. The rate of inflation for baby formula these days is insane. I've seen videos from parents who have older children, and so they were buying formula maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and the price has more than doubled for the same amount of formula. So if the cost of formula is more expensive, that might be cost prohibitive for you, which might make you extend the period of time that you breastfeed your child. What do you think that does to a mother's career prospects? It extends the amount of time she spends out of the workforce even longer, makes it much more difficult for her to re-enter the workforce, or if she stays in the workforce, it makes working very difficult and feeds into that whole thing of, oh, well, she's not dedicated to her job because she's off pumping breast milk every 2 hours. That's, of course, assuming your workplace actually has a place where you can pump breast milk. Most workplaces do not. And then when you're out with your kid, running errands or whatever, you need to breastfeed your kid. People hate public breastfeeding. They will kick you out of spaces for breastfeeding in public, but have no alternative space for you to do that. So where the hell are these moms supposed to breastfeed their kids? Something I forgot to add. Think about how losing those thousands of dollars a year affects your ability to save for your retirement. That is years and years, hundreds of thousands of dollars of lost compound interest that you could be investing. So it affects your entire life because it doesn't just give you less money now, it gives you less money later when you're retired. And they wonder why millennial women aren't having kids, because motherhood's a raw deal. All of these economic and social conditions have a purpose: to drive as many women as possible out of the workforce, back into the home, and force them to be financially dependent upon men. It's not a bug, it's a feature. The system is designed that way.